And like we said, anybody who has a, oh, it's now on. Okay, cool. So anybody who does have a question, please forward that to Abby. I'm happy to take you guys through that stuff. And I did get two great questions already. And one of them was, how many programming languages are out there? And how much is there to discover about programming? And the answer to that is that it's infinite, which is awesome, because there's always something new to learn and discover, even if you're only working within one language. The ways that we can continue to develop and build some of these things are always going to continue to expand. And so somebody had asked us from the museum, what is a great starter programming language? And a lot of folks would tell you Java. And I think Java is maybe an okay answer, but Java is a little tough in some areas. It's an old language, so you're going to see syntax that's maybe a little outdated. And when I talk to people about learning to program and getting interested in programming, I like to go with the lightweight stuff, the scripting stuff, the stuff that you're going to be able to do cool things on the net with, or just write scripts to be able to do whatever you'd like to do. And so I think a great starter language for programming is something called Python. And it's not as snaky as it sounds. I thought that was funny. So what you can do is a wonderful resource for learning Python is a totally free website. Well, and it's not totally free, but I want to show you guys this as well. And I'm going to pull it up before I start sharing my screen. And it's called codeacademy.com. And the tagline of the site literally is learn to code for free, which is a really, really cool thing. So Ab, I'm going to start sharing my screen now, hon. And so what you can do with Code Academy is it's like anything else. You can create an account if you'd like. And what we can do with this is there's all kinds of, there's an entire catalog of all different pieces of programming aptitude that you can get into here. With catalog, you can start in coding foundations, basics of computer science, data sciences. And when you get into these different areas, it also is really great because it shows you kind of the paths that you're going to embark on if you start in these areas. So, coding foundations in computer science history, career explorations, and app development would be here. If you want to learn about data, machine learning, databases, there's a wealth of resources here in codeacademy.com for that. Computer science itself, and you can see Python is in a lot of this stuff. It's a very big language right now that a lot of people are using for personal use, for industry standards. Code Academy can help you get into web development. It can do initial skill paths for analyzing data with Python, or a different language called R, which is really big. You can look into how to build a chatbot. You can do video games with phaser.js. If you want to get into web development, codeacademy.com is a fantastic resource for learning how to build websites using HTML, CSS markup, and GitHub. A lot of industry standards that I use in my work are so readily accessible in this website. So this is a fantastic resource for everybody who would ever want to start learning to program. Codeacademy.com is the first place where I send them. So if we wanted to look into Python a little bit, and it's been a little while since I've been on Code Academy, but we can try to pull up some good examples here too, just to show you guys what code looks like. And as you scroll down as well, there are even courses too that you can take. Now, some of this is behind a paywall, but as far as the basics go, it's all free, which is amazing. And that's I think, one of the things that it should be. And that's going to dovetail into some of the work that I've done in ArcGIS about data being free and accessible. So if we just go into Learn Python 2, for example, and I didn't even log in or make an account, you can start right up. So if we take a look about Python, right? Python's a general purpose, versatile, and popular programming language. It's great as a first language. See, I told you. And because it's concise and easy to read, it's also a good language to have in any programmer stack, as it can be used for everything from web development to software applications, the whole kit and caboodle. Oh, actually, Abby, my sister wants to join in the Zoom. Can you let her in? Jamie Goldstein should be logging in if that's okay. Yeah, we're good. Hi, Jame. There she is. Hey, Jamers. All right, so again, Python, right? Python has some of the best takeaways for early programmers. It gives you great introductions to fundamental programming concepts and the programming language itself. And it's a really good jumping off point. If you want to extend into databases or website development, Python's a great way for you guys to start. So if we just take a really, really high look at Python syntax, and you see here too, I'm going to have to log in. As you see too, though, the great thing about codecademy.com is it's all lesson based. So it's a very good way to kind of start with the basics. And as you get in deeper, you look into things like functions, lists and dictionaries, looping structures, which are very, very common in programming, file input and output, learning to communicate with other computers or devices that have been put into your computer, anything like that. IO covers a wealth of points. So if we click start, I'm going to have to log in real quick with Google. Sorry about that. And then we'll take a look at some starter code. And here we are. It's already loaded up. So you can see this is your most basic fundamentals. And what we say in the programming sphere as far as starting programming is we always talk about hello world. Hello world is, it's kind of funny. If you can get something to communicate, even in testing some of my applications, when I'm debugging and I'm logging things and I need a response, I need a flag. Hello world is a very common way for you to know that something is responding to you. What's great about Code Academy is you don't need anything additional on your computer to actually work with the code. So as you can see, what Code Academy will do is it'll give you the lesson plan right here. If you need hints, you can get them. And it basically just gives you a nice top-down view of the lesson that you're working on. So the easiest thing to always start is communication to the console. So if I just say print and I say hello and I say run, you can see in the output over here, this would be what we call in the programming world, we would call it the console. So one thing that you can do in debugging and testing your code is always being able to print certain things out to the console. Now, obviously, this whole hello world concept is as basic as you're going to get, right? And I can say, hi, Abby. Thank you so much for having me today. Hi, Jamie, right? And I can say run. And now, since I've added two print statements here, they'll both show up. But knowing what I know, I bet that if I also said hello world, and then I add a plus sign, and I add another string, and by the way, these things in quotes are a very common programming language thing called strings. Data types is something that's really important, and Python can get into that for you. But again, this is very basic stuff. But what you can do up front is you can do what we call concatenating. So you can bring two strings together, and I can say, hello world, Python is very fun. And I can do an exclamation point, and then I can hit run. And you see it only came out as one string like that. So what compilers can do is, and essentially what a compiler does is it interprets your code that you write. So there's actually code that reads your code. And it's kind of funny in that way. So what the Python compiler will do is it will read my code. And what it's interpreted is it said, okay, Mitch wants these two strings to be put together, and he wants them to output on one line. And there you go. And so again, Python is a great starter language. You can see it's very readable. As we get into some deeper things, I'm going to go forward a little bit here. Let's see if I go to the box over here. So strings, we kind of already, oh, it's locked, is it? That's interesting. So the one thing that Code Academy also has you do is work through the lessons to unlock more stuff. But as we get into things like variables, you can start working with number data, integers, all that kind of stuff. And so Python's a great place to start for those of you who want to, get into programming, and codecademy.com is absolutely your one-stop shop for learning how to get into the industry. Abby, do we have any other questions to the forum at this time, or should I maybe get into ArcGIS a little bit? Oh, I don't see you. No? All right, cool. So we're going to go into ArcGIS then. So what I wanted to do was, oh, there's a chat. Oh, you are muted, Abby. We're good? All right. So what I wanted to get you, and that was a great question in fundamentals and starting in programming. I think that's a great question. This is absolutely the place to start. But what I wanted to show you guys was some things. This segment is called Ask a Scientist, and so what I wanted to show you was some more scientific applications of what I had been starting coding originally in my industry. So for those of you who are maybe just joining the call, earlier I had talked about, and I'll stop sharing my screen for just a second. Earlier, what I had been talking about was how I got my start in my career, and I was working for an electric utility. And what I had used in working with the electric utility and programming for them was a platform called Arcgis. And Arcgis is a platform that's all about data. And it's about data to inform, for any purpose that you could ever imagine. We'll get into, in how GIS can be used for environmental purposes. But what I use GIS for in my work in the regulated industry is in the electric industry, is we used GIS to map out the electrical grid for our provider. And they would send designs to the design techs, and that's how they would do their work. So they could actually change the maps to reflect what was out in the field for the electrical grid. So I want to show everybody a little bit about what GIS is, because it's another open platform that's very accessible and very easy to learn about. So if I share my screen again, I want to show everybody kind of the basics of what ArcGIS is. So if you go to arcgis.com, and you can see right away, they call Esri's moniker is the science of where, which I really like. I think that's a really cool thing, because that genuinely, what is it about? It is a mapping and analytics platform, and it, for the most part, runs in the cloud, and it has a range of capabilities, and they're all grounded in science. It's all about getting big data accessible to the masses in a way that's lightweight, and is extremely deeply informative. And as the technology continues to change, the maps are going from 2D to 3D, which is something that's really, really cool. I didn't have a lot of experience working with 3D mapping in my, in my time working with GIS, but the applications to this platform are wide and deeply varied. So like I said, I used it in the electrical industry, but there are also a wealth of examples and industry standards that people are using ArcGIS for. And there's a good video of one that I wanted to show that can take everybody kind of through a different regulated application of GIS.
We manage over 800,000 acres of oil and gas rights in Pennsylvania. And the electronic GIS platform has given us tools to manage large amounts of data that weren't possible before, when we were using a paper or even rudimentary databases.
Our role is to make sure that we optimize hydrocarbon development. That's how we make money. And the way we do that is we have to be able to place our borehole in our target and place it as effectively as possible. The only way to do that is to make sure that we know and we share information between departments, and GIS has been able to facilitate that process.
In the days before we had a GIS platform, gathering information to make informed decision was very laborious and very slow. And as a result, we didn't evaluate all of the information that was available. With the new GIS platform, we are able to efficiently and quickly gather the information, present it in fashions that tell the story, and provide that information to upper management, to our board of directors, to others that are involved in making those decisions, so that the decision is being made with all of the available information that is pertinent to the decision.
Leveraging the ArcGIS platform and portal has allowed us to apply a more geocentric view to non-spatial information within the company, and allowed further analysis that you couldn't necessarily make, and draw conclusions that you couldn't necessarily come to without seeing it spatially.
The GIS platform has been a big advantage. I have it open on my computer every day. We use it for so many things. We use it for checking GIS coordinates for well locations. We use it for measuring the distance of pipelines, checking elevations of pipelines.
we are now growing into using the platform from various devices from any location, and it will be tremendously helpful so that our field representatives can access the data from the courthouse, from field locations, from the kitchen of a lessor, so that they can access the data when they need it and where they need it.
The land department, like most departments, when they utilize GIS now, they're able to answer questions themselves and not have to not only come to the GIS department to ask the question, but wait on the GIS department to answer their question, because we may not always be able to stop what we're doing and answer their question for them. Now they have the ability to do that themselves, and we've really empowered the end user spatially and allowed them to access everything within the company as far as spatial data is concerned.
GIS has enabled us to make more informed decisions by allowing us to integrate various data sets, both geology and geophysical data, along with surface control. That enables us to drill more effective wells, drill wells that are primarily in our target zone, and optimize the chance that we're going to make as much money as possible. That's the bottom line.
There's no doubt in my mind that we see significant economic value from having a GIS platform, and that it more than pays for itself in the speed of access to data, in making decisions more quickly and having more thorough information to make those decisions. And the value is significant.
Right. So, that was just a little bit about sort of some background in GIS. And what we heard there was sort of those folks speaking to the economic value of the GIS. I'm getting some good questions too, and I will circle back to those. At the end of the video there, you heard them speaking to the economic value that GIS brings to their platforms. But the other really, really cool thing that you heard them talking about was their informity with the data and how accessible it is. A lot of these platforms are being created and are being generated in such a way that you actually don't necessarily need this deep programming knowledge to be able to use this technology, to its fullest. And I think that's why GIS is so cool. It allows that informity and that data on such a wide scale for so many people. And I think that's really neat. And again, in that video, they were talking about the economic benefits of GIS, but what I think is really cool is some of the other stuff in terms of ArcGIS's mission statement. And when we talk about, again, this platform is this video is called Ask a Scientist. What I think the most inspiring thing about GIS is its ability to inform world health and that kind of stuff. And Esri has entire dashboards and platforms devoted to conservation, ecological crises, restoring biodiversity. Charlotte, I know you're on the phone, and I know you care about this stuff very deeply too. And I'm sure you've used GIS in your day-to-day. There are wildly awesome success stories that people have used this platform for conservational purposes, to collect data, to predict the outlook of climate change and things like that. It's a wonderfully informative platform that is deeply accessible to all kinds of people. And it's not even necessarily in GIS about looking to the future in conservation. What you can also do with GIS as a platform is work against things like disaster response. I think one of the things about technology is that everyone is so focused about security and hackers and this and that, but there are platforms out there that are truly being used for good, like Esri and ArcGIS. To know that there are dedicated platforms that are going to be about disaster response. And actually, you guys can even see too, if you go onto arcgis.com, they have dashboards that are ready for you to use. For example, my parents spend a lot of their time in Florida, and hurricane season is coming up. And with this public dashboard that Esri provides to the world, which, by the way, you can download the source code for, shows a consistent readout of hurricanes across the world. This is what this company does. They are all about getting data to the masses in the most informative way possible. I think that's really cool. And again, so what I used this platform for in my work was for the electrical utility, for the designers and the field techs to be able to access the maps for PPL electric utilities to say, okay, where exactly do we need to place this transformer down to the GPS coordinate, for them to be able to do that stuff on a platform that's accessible on their iPhones, on their smart books, anywhere. I think that's the really, really cool thing about GIS. And so doing the actual development of that was really neat because you can code anything that you see in the maps, and you can also interact with it in code too. So it's not just a visual thing. And for the back-end coding for there, just to tie back into the programming languages that I used, that was a lot of Microsoft's industry standard stuff, C#, .NET, and ASP, those kind of things. When you look at Microsoft's enterprise languages, you're going to see a lot of applications there in that sphere. I'm also getting some fantastic questions back that I did want to address to the group. One that I thought is really insightful is, do I think it's worth practicing coding to do math versus using Excel? That's an interesting question. And I think they both have a lot of merit. Excel, as I matured in my career, I use Excel all the time. I think Excel for doing math is a great skill. I mean, the functionality in Excel is extremely deep. You can code macros in Excel. You can have, actually, in college, I coded something that worked from Excel to actually a little Python script that I would run, and it would register my classes for me, which was funny. So I didn't have to wake up at 6:45 in the morning to code my classes. I wrote my listing out in Excel, and I gave them identifiers. I did 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And I included the URLs where I would need to go to register for those classes and my login info. And I wrote a script that read all that from Excel, and it registered my classes for me. It only didn't work one time. The class was full. But I think that question about practicing coding to do math versus using Excel, my answer would be put your hands together. Learn how to make those things work with each other. Excel is an extremely powerful platform. And it's an industry standard. There's not always going to be applications where you can do that kind of thing. But it was pretty fun. And the funniest part about that registration thing was it was actually a project in one of my computer science classes. So I don't know if Professor Califoot just wanted to give us an edge to help us get our classes, but it did work out, so that's the other thing too. That was really fun for us as a class. We enjoyed that project. It was really cool. So I in my daily life, when I'm looking at spreadsheets of projects that I'm managing, I always say, oh, I hate Excel. It's the worst, but there's always uses for things like that. And so being able to leverage some of the functionality, and when I say functionality, I mean some of the math stuff that Excel can do for you, deeply, deeply powerful platform. VLOOKUPs, data management, Excel is a great, great tool for that. But again, one can inform the other. Another good question I got was, what does the future of coding look like? Which is another question that's really wild. The future of coding looks like artificial intelligence. We have these devices now that want to help us live our lives because it's how they're programmed. I have devices that know when I get home, well, when I was still commuting, but when I got home from work in the wintertime and my PIN was at a certain address, my smart home devices would turn on. Artificial intelligence is the future to a point, right? I mean, I think we have to understand and learn the right ways to make technology work for us and for benefiting our lives without it getting out of hand. And I'm certainly not a subject matter expert in artificial intelligence, but it's pervasive enough in our lives that you probably see it everywhere, every day, and you don't even really realize that you're seeing it. Notifications from your applications, your websites that you shop at, all those emails you get every day from people trying to sell you stuff. A lot of that is driven by AI, but artificial intelligence application can continue to grow in areas we touched on before with GIS, like conservation and humanitarianism. AI is everywhere. So I think the future of programming truly is artificial intelligence, and there's really not a high barrier to entry in starting to learn about that, even from a programming standpoint. Another great question I got was, what is a good age to introduce kids to coding? I don't think there's an age that is soon enough. I really don't. Speaking from personal experience, I think, the tools, that we can access in such an easy way to begin learning about coding are everywhere, all over the place. And like I said before we got caught off, my personal thoughts on envisioning what the future looks like for coding and for education in technology, I truly don't know why in 2020 programming is not a core competency in our elementary schools. Everybody can learn how to do this. It's very, and I kind of touched on this before, it's like learning another language. And the really great thing about programming is once you start to understand the big concepts like data types, function management, instantiation of objects in object-oriented programming type languages, once you get the fundamentals of programming, your world is open in terms of the subject matter. That's when you can really start to look into different languages, like some of the things I touched on before, Node.js, Java, your web-facing applications like JavaScript and HTML and CSS. Once the initial sort of barrier and the concepts of how to program is within your wheelhouse, it's all open and you're ready to go. So as far as what age it's a good age to start kids coding, I would say as early as possible. And that's a fantastic segue, and I'm getting a lot of great questions. So I'm going to change my path a little bit for the rest of this meeting, but I don't want to necessarily leave the future of coding and the age to start coding thing yet. I have one other thing that I do want to share, which is something that I think would be very accessible and actually is oriented for kids themselves. And this is something that is developed specifically by Apple. So obviously everybody has our phones. And earlier I said too, my inspiration to start understanding more about information technology was the iPhone 3G. I was freaking captivated by that thing. I just thought it was like, how fast this moves when that's crazy. The fact that it's just this like magic piece of glass in my hand that I can just like touch and it's like doing stuff, that's wild, right? So I needed to know everything about it. And before, really up until 2015, when Apple's proprietary programming language, which is called Swift, was introduced, a lot of their stuff was kept under wraps. You would get a job at Apple and then you would be in. But what they've done as a platform and as a company in recent years is phenomenal. They've become deeply, deeply open. And so something that I wanted to show everybody today, and again, this relates to when to start coding and how to get kids excited about coding, is a great, great application and platform called Swift Playgrounds. So again, Swift is Apple's proprietary programming language. And there is a phenomenal application that it's very, very visual. It's almost kind of like the Code Academy thing we worked on before earlier in the session, but it's times a million. And again, Swift is Apple's homegrown language. So for those of you out there that may be interested in getting into the mobile development sphere, working on apps for your iPhones or your iPads or even your Mac, their platform is becoming very synonymous. So as you learn to maybe develop for your iPhone, you can start to bring your stuff over to Mac or iPad too. It's very, very cool what they're doing about their central ecosystem. But what Swift Playgrounds is, and it's a platform that's available for Mac and for iPad. And what it does is it's essentially a game. They turned programming into this really, really fun and revolutionary app for iPad and Mac. And it truly is so interactive and cool. And it requires absolutely no programming knowledge at all. It's perfect for students just starting out. And as you can see, this little guy right here, I happen to know his name is Byte, which is a funny programming plan, whereas a byte is a tiny piece of data. So that's kind of funny too. But there are amazing things that you can do. And as you can see here, from the iPad, what it does is it looks a lot like what we looked at before in Code Academy, where you type your code in and then you watch it run on the other side. And there is a demo video, which I'll show everybody. I was actually going to open Swift Playgrounds and jump into a little bit, but I'm getting so many great questions that I'm just going to show you guys a demo in one of Apple's keynotes from a few weeks ago, or I'm sorry, a few years ago, actually. But it's deeply engaging of a platform. Everybody out there has an iPad or a Mac maybe. Unfortunately, this isn't something that's available for iPhone, but that's really because you do need the bigger screen to work through that. But a lot of what Swift is focused on is educating yourself in Swift and how to program it to move this fun little character through the world and collect things and do all kinds of stuff. It's a really cool platform. There's levels, there's puzzles and coding concepts. And so what Apple's done, and again, this is marketed specifically to kids. So the answer of when should kids start to code, it's never too soon. Never, ever, ever. This is technology's never going away. And the more informed we can get our generations of the future about how coding is and how it works, we'll be a lot better off as a society, quite frankly. And they really do, they turn it into a game. And what they focus on in these fundamentals are core programming fundamentals, how to issue commands, function development, looping structures, parameters, conditional statements, variables, all of these things that no matter these things right here, no matter what programming language you're in, you're going to see this stuff. And I mean, I could go on and on and on about what each of these things are, but I'll spare you guys the details. But the Swift Playgrounds allows a platform that, again, is totally free. That's the key. For kids and adults of all ages to be able to just pick up their iPad and start learning how to code. It's really that easy. And I think there's a really cool video that I would want to show everybody. It's from up here, just to show you guys how it works in action. There is a demo that Apple has on the website.
I am thrilled to show you Swift Playgrounds, an incredible new app that transforms how kids learn to code. I'll launch it right now. We land on this gorgeous screen full of custom content from Apple. Up at the top are lessons, and down below we have challenges. I'm going to start with the very first lesson in the fundamentals of Swift. We see a preview of the content with graphics and a description, and I'll open it. It starts with an introduction to the coding concept I'll be learning, and when I'm good and ready, I can just tap in the lower corner to start coding. Over on the right, you can see we have an interactive world that I can explore using touch. I'll swipe it, looks good, and pinch to zoom. This is Byte. He's my character. I think he's irresistible, and I'll be controlling him with code. Over on the left are instructions that explain and help guide me through the problem I'll be solving. And down below is where I enter my code. Byte's been waiting patiently, so I'll tap to enter Swift code. You can see commands have appeared at the bottom. These are just like quick type suggestions, but for code. My objective in this lesson is to get him to the end of that path and collect the gem. So I'll tap move forward 3 times and then collect gem. Watch the world on the right as I run my code. Byte moves forward, he follows the commands in the exact order I've entered, gets the gem, and I've completed my very first lesson. Now I can continue to the next lesson in the series, or I can jump around to wherever I'd like. To do that, I tap in the top left to open the table of contents. And you can see we include a ton of great content here to engage and motivate learners. This one on loops, looping all the sides, looks a little interesting. I'm going to check it out. Now we have a few lines of code already filled in. I'll go ahead and run it and see what happens. Byte moves forward, he gets the gem, but then he just stops. Aw, poor little guy. He's going to need some help. The solution here, and I know you've all got this, is that I need to repeat that block of code 4 times to get Byte around all 4 sides of the world. To do that, I'm going to need a for loop. I'll tap the plus up top to open my code library, and all I have to do is just drag a for loop right into my code. Now watch this. I can tap that loop, grab the end of it and just drag it all around my code. All right, I'll tap the number placeholder, set this loop to repeat 4 times. Looks good. Okay, keep your eyes on Byte as I run my code. He moves forward, gets the gem, makes a turn, and this time with the added for loop, he just keeps on going. I've finished another lesson and I'm well on my way to mastering loops.
So that was a very, and actually I like that demo because not only does it show about Swift Playgrounds, but it's a very, very neat introduction to one of the most fundamental programming, concepts, which is looping. And so, I think Swift Playgrounds is really, really cool. Where I got that question before and people asking where to start, I think from an enterprise standpoint, codeacademy.com is a really, really great place, to begin. But if you're looking into just sort of learn and kind of want to do it as more of a game exercise almost, and just kind of see what it's all about, Swift Playgrounds is a really, really neat, platform that can be used in that way. It's really, really cool stuff. Apple is definitely pioneering, in terms of getting this stuff out there and accessible to everybody. Anybody that has an iPad can just, start going. It's really cool stuff. I see it's 11:27. Abby, do we want to keep going a couple minutes because of, whatever, or are we?
If you have time, but if you have to get off, we totally understand.
No, I think I can take it till 11:45. I'm good. Let me just do one thing real quick.
Sure.
I just want to check in with work.
Yeah, if you want to just pick up with the questions, or if you have anything else that you want to talk about.
That's the thing. We're getting so many great questions that
all the time I can out of you.
Oh, I do have a hard stop. I have.
You do? Okay. Okay.
I'm so sorry, everybody. Listen. So what I will do though is, I love this stuff. And I'm happy to come back for another session if you guys would have me. We covered some really cool ground here, and I'm getting some great questions that I would love to continue to answer for you guys. Abby, has my contact information. So, if anybody wants to get in touch with me to start to learn about this stuff and a little more, I think Swift was a good place for us to stop up. And unfortunately, I do have a meeting at 11:30. So duty calls. But thank you guys so much for having me.
Thank you so much for participating.
You got it, hon. Clearly, I'm very passionate about this stuff.
Yes.
And I think we need the world to be, like I said, we have all these devices, we have all this technology that's around us at all times. And I think the barrier to learning it and mastering it is so low. It just is something that everybody should know how to do. Thanks again. And I really appreciate everybody welcoming me and take it easy. And like I said, Abby's got my contact info. If you guys want my email, Abby has it, she can get it. And, any questions you guys want to forward along, I'm happy to work with you guys and keep the education going.
Thank you so much.
Yep.
All right. We will see everyone next week. Thank you for the patience and the flexibility of this Zoom.
Hey guys.
We'll see you next time. Thank you.